These are the top 25 most overpowered villains in the MCU. Alright, we're kicking things off with some Lake Placid vibes. Amit may have only made her appearance right towards the end of Moon Knight, but she sure did make an impact. Even the Great Khonshu was getting violated by her, and all this time I was thinking that he was the most powerful dude on the show. Clearly I was wrong, because the disrespect was crazy. The entire show pivoted towards Amit's awakening, and her strength did prove why she was worth the effort. I liked her character design and everything, but let's face it, her surprising dominance over Moon Knight's supposed god had us all locked in. It took a combined effort from all the leads to be able to take her down, which is why she deserves a spot on the list despite not having that much screen time. Heck, she's completely CGI too, but even so, she made one heck of an impression on us all. And in case you're wondering whether she has the head of a crocodile or an alligator, let me just say that the Lake Placid reference wasn't just mentioned for the sake of it. If you want to know the main difference between the two, it's that you see one of them in a while and the other one later. Up next is the TV version of Hannibal Lecter, aka Mads Mikkelsen. While Caecilius may not be as iconic as everyone's favourite cannibal, he does have a lot to flex when it comes to his magical powers. Sure, in no way is he as powerful as the Sorcerer Supreme, but with his minion of soldiers, he can be a serious threat, as we all saw when he took out the Ancient One. It's not just about his character's powers, but also his attitude that makes him so menacing and scary. I mean, when I saw him the first time, I thought Doctor Strange would have to team up with the Ancient One, Wong, and probably all of freaking Harry Potter to defeat him. That's just how much aura he was radiating. But then I realised that it was all because of Mr. Mikkelsen. Anyway, we can't ignore the fact that on top of his magical abilities, the man has a lot of tact and leadership skills that make it easy for him to control his followers. Let's take a look at Red Skull now. I'm sure some may disagree about his placement above freaking Amit and Caecilius, but I just want to remind you that this list doesn't just take powers into consideration. There's also importance to the story and how difficult it was for the hero to win. Of course, impact will always be a metric, and the Red Skull ticks a lot of those boxes. Keep in mind that he masked his identity for a long time, and it was mostly towards the business end that we saw his true form. Hugo Weaving got in his acting bag as usual, because Schmidt was quite an obnoxious character too. See, Red Skull didn't just have enhanced strength or reflexes, he had a level of intellect that would stun most other villains. He was ready to make full use of the Tesseract, and even though he got cursed afterwards, you could argue that he gained immortality as well, although that's not something I want to brag about in front of the homies. There's no questioning the strength of this villain at all, as Abomination meets us at number 22. First of all, I just want to say that he's got one of the most appropriate villain names of all time. This dude totally looks like an abomination, and his name brings a kind of weight to it, which he justifies with his strength. Man, he was a completely unstoppable brute force of nature. For the majority of the final battle, I was left wondering if the Hulk could inflict any kind of damage at all on him, and regardless of the way it ended, I'm pretty sure Bruce Banner was breathing a huge sigh of relief once he saw the freak beat him down. It's amazing because Abomination's main weapon is his strength and maybe above average agility. However, that's more than enough for him to be considered an S-tier threat, definitely worthy of going toe-to-toe with our beloved Angry Green Giant. It was Agatha all along at number 21. The MCU has a fair bit of content out as TV shows, so just like Moon Knight, we're taking the ace villain from WandaVision. It's fair to say that all of us got sucker punched when it was revealed that Agatha was the imposter among us, but then again, in hindsight, we should have known that there was no one else to suspect. As a villain, her deceptions were great, but her powers are nothing to disregard either. She's supposed to be one of the most powerful witches of all time in the MCU, and it shows. In the final battle, she gave Wanda a serious run for her money and won all the mini-fights they had before the main draw. Even then, Wanda had to rely on some highly subtle spell casting to be able to turn the tables. Agatha became an instant favourite from the show, and her popularity even warranted a spin-off series based on her, but sadly, the studios took too much time to make it and the momentum was lost by the time Agatha All Along came out. Up next is the king of gaslighting. Yeah, Mysterio had quite a few of us tricked into thinking he could be the good guy, but it didn't take long for all of us to realise that he was always playing us. While the role may not have done Jake Gyllenhaal any favours, especially considering how the movie was timed along with the re-release of his ex's album, but I'm not here for relationship drama, right? Mysterio has some crazy powers, but manipulation and deception reign supreme when it comes to his qualities. The first fight he has with Spider-Man showed us how skilled and dangerous he can be if he actually comes out to play. All those later blasts we saw earlier didn't even compare to these tricks, and let's not forget the fact that he got his hands on Edith as well. With such powerful tech at his disposal, Mysterio was well on his way to become a sort of dictator, so Spider-Man stopping him was a key outcome. And this is why I place him above the ones I've covered so far.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker. Please, fix this.
Okay, we're now going to be taking a look at Doctor Strange, but in an ultimate form. He's essentially Strange Supreme here, and while he does become good later on, his initial attitude was definitely villainous. I was actually thinking of putting in Sinister Doctor Strange here, but that guy was weaker than our favourite wizard, and this version is way too overpowered. Like, just take a look at everything he absorbs. The dude's got a freaking Chimera dragon lurking within him, so there's no way I was going to ignore putting him on this list. Once again, I admit that he did use his powers for good when the alternative Avengers took down peak form Ultron, but he didn't start off that way now, did he? I guess it's the exact opposite of what we learned in The Dark Knight. Our man didn't die a villain, so he lived long enough to become the hero. Also, I know this has nothing to do with his powers, but shout out to the animators for doing such a good job with his character design.
Won't you die?
In at number 18 is the Winter Soldier, aka Bucky. He's another case of a villain becoming good, although I should point out that he did start off as a good guy in the first Avenger. And yeah, I'm well aware of the fact that he stands no chance against most of the people I've scored him over, so please remember what I said about powers not being the only criteria here, okay? I mean, if that was the case, then all of Thanos' army and a few others would have occupied my top 10. Alright, look, back to the Winter Soldier. He's basically Steve Rogers with a metallic arm instead of a shield, but the impact he has on the second Captain America film was a whole other level. He felt like this unstoppable foe, whom even Steve had to tackle with caution, and the fact that he was his long-lost buddy only made things a lot more interesting. Plus, he's the guy who killed Tony Stark's parents. That act alone made him diabolical enough to be on this list.
Some neat trick.
Alright, let's clear the way for a living legend to make his mark. Willem Dafoe probably appears in more movies than even Pedro Pascal, but his most iconic role forever be that of the Green Goblin. Since he and Tobey Maguire both appeared in No Way Home, it makes the OG Spidey flick official MCU canon. So yeah, I'm definitely including a lot more from the 2002 film, because that's where we see the Goblin at his menacing best. And yes, he's also quite scary in No Way Home, especially when he starts laughing while Peter whacks him. I mean, come on man, at least don't creep us out in the middle of a freaking battle. Anyway, I'll give an honourable mention to Doc Ock, but as far as legacy goes, it's easily the Goblin who comes out on top. We have an endearing father figure making his way in at number 16. Xu Wenwu is the perfect fighter in many senses, and yes, it was a relief to see the MCU doing their best to correct the mess they left behind in Iron Man 3 regarding the Mandarin. What makes Wenwu such an intimidating opponent is that he makes no active effort to scare you. He brings about a sense of calmness that makes you feel uneasy, and when he actually starts to strike, one realizes that it's pretty much game over. Utilizing the rings totally boosted his powers and skills, but at least by the end of the movie, he decided to do what any father is expected to do for his child. Tony Leung is a legend, and I was actually happy to see him bring on tons of aura to this role. Namor makes it to the list, edging out Killmonger by the barest of margins. I was really conflicted between these two, but at the end of the day, I chose Namor because he seems to have tons of brute strength. Also, this guy has some legit powers, with his first proper appearance being really intense. You could tell you were dealing with someone who deserved your attention just from the way he effortlessly caused all that chaos. He felt like a truly dangerous villain, and his backstory fit perfectly into the movie too. I also really liked how unique his way of flying was. It's as if he was skating through the air. Plot armor made it compulsory for him to lose the final battle, but don't let that take away from the fact that he's an absolute badass.
Behold, your guardians of the galaxy.
Up next is Ronan the Accuser, who should actually be called the Destroyer considering how badly he violated Drax. Look, he might not be the loudest or flashiest villain in the MCU, but he's definitely not one you can just brush aside. As a Kree warlord obsessed with wiping out anything he sees as unworthy, he comes across as both ruthless and unshakably devoted to his cause. His dark armor and massive hammer give him an intimidating presence that already makes him stand out. But when Ronan gets his hands on the Power Stone, things shift to a whole different level. Boosted by the Infinity Stone's energy, his durability and raw strength skyrocket to a much higher level. He shrugged off a direct shot from a planet-level cannon, survived being crushed by a spaceship, and wields a weapon strong enough to tear through planetary defenses in seconds. Even though his reign with the stone wasn't the longest, his threat is massive.
And stand down.
Ah yes, look who we have here. The God of Mischief is one heck of a character for MCU fans. He spent his first 2 movies as an outright villain, but the vibe just didn't land, so the producers decided to make him an unwilling anti-hero, which was, strangely enough, the best thing that could have happened to him. Of course, this isn't to say that he was a horrible antagonist, because he did wreak havoc and cause a lot of problems for Earth's mightiest warriors. Considering the fact that he's a literal god does put him in elite company.
Kneel.
Number 12 is another Thor villain, and this guy could have actually been a serious menace if they decided to promote him above a side character's role. This beast made Thor look like a Ken doll in front of him, and he was able to smack Mjolnir away. The feat alone was enough for us to be thankful that Curse was done with right there and then, because there's no telling how lethal he would have become if he was allowed to go further in the MCU. Plus, when you look as scary as that, any superhero would look like a weakling. I genuinely feared for Thor's life when he was getting whacked by Curse, so as luck would have it, the villain from the previous entry decided to come to the rescue. Number 11 features Dormammu from Doctor Strange. To be honest, I was thinking of either him or Galactus, but since the Fantastic Four First Steps isn't out on VOD at the time of writing this script, I'll admit that I'm not a fan of his character design, but I can at least appreciate how ominous he looked, even with all the colours. Also, he wasn't just a gag villain for the sake of a meme. We saw him completely destroy Strange multiple times. It gave us a slight glimpse into his power levels, and the main message I got from this was, there's no way you're gonna beat me, puny sorcerer. So to sum it all up, someone as powerful as Doctor Strange still needed an Infinity Stone just to force a stalemate with Dormammu. Starting my top 10 with Gore the God Butcher. Man, this guy had all the makings to become one of the MCU's greatest villains, but Thor Love and Thunder never fully used his true potential. Brought to life by Christian Bale, Gore starts off as a desperate alien watching his daughter die in a barren world while the gods he worships ignore his pleas. That heartbreak twists into rage when he bonds with the all-black Necro Sword, which as its name suggests, is a sinister weapon that gives him terrifying abilities, thus fueling his crusade against the so-called divine. Armed with the sword, Gore becomes strong enough to kill gods with ease, wielding shadows like extensions of his own fury, almost like an evil Sung Jin Woo. His mission took him across the cosmos, nearly ending in victory when he reached eternity itself, ready to erase every god from existence. At the end of it all, Thor had to appeal to his hidden compassion, leading Gore to make one final wish, not for destruction, but for his daughter's return. Up next is the best possible example of AI gone rogue in the MCU. Ultron may not have been looked at as a strong villain in terms of overall appeal, but with time, people have slowly begun to understand why he did what he did. What's truly scary about Ultron is that he was completely neutral in the beginning. He obviously wasn't as obedient as Jarvis, but the way he went about his evil plan was carefully thought out after he browsed the entirety of the World Wide Web. Yeah, imagine going through all of the internet in lightning fast time. I might have had the same reaction for all I know. His vibranium form was pretty solid and his army made him a much larger threat, but the live action version alone is good enough for number 9.
You're unbearably naive.
Yes. Now we've got the evil Scarlet Witch with a massive boost from the Darkhold. I spoke about villains turning into heroes, so here's a hero who turned into a villain. I still don't buy the reason for her turning over to the dark side, but I suppose living in her own fantasy world took enough of a toll on her to long for her kids that didn't exist in her reality. Anyway, Evil Wanda was a super tough opponent, and the best way to summarize it is in the form of how she destroyed the Illuminati, although I personally think that whole bit was quite unnecessary from a storytelling perspective. As far as the badass flexing of power goes, I'm all for it, because it showed us exactly what the Darkhold could do. How about that? We have a 2025 character this high up. But then again, did you even see what the Void was capable of? Honestly, getting trapped inside the Void is so much worse than getting dusted for good. Not only do you get trapped into your worst nightmares until you go crazy, there's the fact that the only thing left behind you is a shadow. Yeah, everything you are or used to be is now reduced to an afterimage. He was already super overpowered as Sentry, but as the Void, Bob becomes a superior force of darkness that can envelope anyone and everyone in their own trauma. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff we need to see more of in the MCU, so I'm hoping this is a sign of better things to come.
This isn't right.
This is what you want!
It's not possible.
Darling, you have no idea what's possible.
In at number 6, we have the ultimate girl boss in Hela. Okay, she may be a villain, but that doesn't mean she can't be respected, right? This ain't simping either, otherwise I would have made a whole video just on her. Anyway, I don't think that any villain has been able to flex their powers as immediately as Hela, the goddess of death. The title alone should have been enough to land her at number 6, but then she figured that she really needed to show the audience who she is. Destroying Mjolnir was a shocker to everyone, and mind you, this was when she wasn't even at full power. Hela's ability to generate endless weapons is a cheat skill of sorts because she's never really defenseless. Think about it, even if you beat her in a sword fight, it's no use because she can just summon 100 more of them without any issues. Hela and Asgard is kinda like Superman and the sun, so I guess that's enough of a reference point to rest my case, wouldn't you agree? Up next is Surtur, who was perhaps the one villain who got me to change my opinion on him the quickest. Look, you can't exactly blame me for it, because when Thor humiliated him in the opening, I just thought of him as some kind of cannon fodder for humour. However, all of that changed the moment I saw what he was capable of when Loki reawakened him. Yeah, this wasn't the same Surtur who commanded zero respect from those around him. This was an absolute monster who was capable of destroying an entire planet, and it even proved that he could walk the talk by obliterating Asgard. And for context, Hela was like an insect to him, as she wasn't even able to land any kind of considerable damage. This is the same villainess who could take on Thor's most powerful lightning blast and destroy his hammer too.
This alone.
You cannot deny the purpose the universe has bestowed upon you.
Okay, now we have ourselves our very first Celestial. The MCU has this strange habit of obnoxiously nerfing god-level beings because they want to give normal superheroes a chance to fight them. That's kind of what happened with Ego too, but I'll also argue the fact that he only got taken down largely due to his own half-god son awakening his own powers to keep him busy, while a whole other team set out to target his one weak zone. Also, the dude is a freaking planet. Do I really need to justify that any further? Anyway, Ego isn't all about power, he's equally about his cold, heartless persona. The one time he falls in love with someone, he decides it's better to end her so that she doesn't get in his way. Like, how am I even supposed to give him a chance if he functions with this kind of reasoning? But yeah, apart from creating his own planet, he's also shown some pretty insane skills like regeneration, super strength, shape-shifting, and many others. Star-Lord was super powerful here, but even he could only hold off his dad at best, allowing for the other Guardians to get to Ego's brain and end it all. It's quite surprising to see number 3 being occupied by someone from the Eternals. Arishem the Judge is a freaking Celestial, so you can imagine how easy it must be for him to have gotten such a high position. Yeah, we got done with Ego in the previous entry, but based on the descriptions I've read of Arishem, I just had to place him a little bit higher. Not only is he supposed to be immensely powerful, he's also described as being nearly omnipotent with cosmic powers that allow him to create, manipulate, and destroy anything on a universal scale. Yeah, that's way more dangerous than a planetary threat. As the leader of the Celestials, Arishem possesses total control over reality and wields a ridiculous amount of cosmic energy that could alter space, time, and life itself. This dude's authority is considered absolute, which is why he has the title of the Judge. We don't see much of him in the Eternals, but whenever he does make an appearance, his authority is dominant. Also, I read somewhere that he's capable of withstanding attacks from beings that are powerful as Odin, and he can also survive planetary explosions. Closely missing out on number 1 entirely due to bad writing is Kang the Conqueror. Yes, I mean what I say, nobody can change my mind. Now, I'm not going to get into the messy affairs of Jonathan Majors, but I will talk about how insanely overpowered Kang is. You remember the time he met Ant-Man and confused him for Thor? Yeah, imagine this. The freaking God of Thunder is so insignificant to this villain that he easily confuses him for someone like Scott Lang. I mean, no shade to Ant-Man, but even Paul Rudd would agree with me on that. Kang is all-knowing and all-powerful, which was also stated in the first season finale of Loki. He was confident of everything regardless of the final result because he pretty much knew all the varied outcomes of that particular situation. We get a glimpse of his powers in the Quantumania film, but it all goes to waste with some really accommodating writing and plot armor that's so heavy, even Godzilla would be as light as a feather compared to it. Yeah, that's pretty much the main reason I haven't placed him at number 1.
Give it to me, Janet.
Because you won't be alive to tell them.
Our number 1 entry is without a doubt the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. He isn't just an overpowered villain, he's the MCU's big bad wolf of who's been in the limelight ever since the first Avengers movie. Everything up until Endgame had him as the final boss, and his character did a lot more than simply live up to the hype. Thanos' power levels are something else entirely, because our first proper introduction to him has us witnessing him whooping Thor. With the amount of attention given to Thanos and the insane number of superheroes that were needed to defeat him, it goes without saying that he was the most overpowered villain across the MCU, even to this date. And yes, there's always the ace in his pocket, the Infinity Stones. It doesn't matter how much stronger your opponent is than you, if you can simply wish away his existence with the snap of a finger. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video I know you're going to enjoy.